Well, once again, the Doctor finds himself basically on his own. With the exception of K9 Mark II, he's got no companions. So, he decides to take a little vacation. Except someone decides he needs a quest. And so, this season has an overarching storyline based around something called the Key to Time, which is a Tesseract-like device that holds ultimate power over time and space. In his first adventure with his new companion, appointed to him supposedly by the president of Gallifrey, but really by the White Guardian, who looks like the guy from Jurassic Park on vacation. A girl named Romana, whose full name is very, very hard to pronounce. Just look it up. I'll just call her Romana. They've been given a special device, a stabilizing unit, which, when combined with the cube parts, which have been split into 6 segments, will stabilize the device. And the stabilizer itself acts as a Geiger counter, detecting the various pieces. And it looks like a wand, so that's something. Their first adventure takes them to a planet that experiences an extremely long winter and extremely long summers, called Ice Time and Sun Time. And the people of that world are sort of medieval, but they do have some technology. The Doctor and Romana end up at a castle where ancient treasures are guarded by this giant lion-sized lizard. And basically the world is pretty unimpressive, except for supposed deposits of special minerals that could be useful in space travel. Within the castle are 2 con men who plan to steal some of the treasure, but not all of it, because that would be suspicious. They plan to basically sell something valuable to this pompous ex-prince who wants the minerals of that world to build up a fleet and take back his throne from his half-brother. But the guy's a jerk, so we're definitely not rooting for him. The plan is to get a payment and then steal it from the vault, so the false contract is not revealed until it's too late. Meanwhile, the main con man's partner, he tries to con the prince into locating a mine of very rich mineral on the planet separately. He's got good initiative, but he's not quite intelligent enough to, or I should say, experienced enough to play that sort of con yet. Ultimately, the Doctor and Romana discover that the first piece of the key is actually shaped like a chunk of the special mineral that the con man uses in his games. See, the pieces can change shape and grant serious power in their own right. Ultimately, the Doctor and Romana prevail. The evil prince is defeated by his own hubris, and the con men end up getting the loot off of the dead prince's ship, so even they get rewarded. Well, not really rewarded so much as given a second chance. On to the next planet, which, as it turns out, is actually a hollow spaceship, which teleports around smaller planets and gobbles them up, basically like Galactus. And on the surface are these people who are spoiled rotten by riches that are basically mined from the planet, or planets that are torn apart, some of whom are inhabited, or some of which are inhabited. So they're not really inclined to rebel against the cyborg blowhard that is the captain of the operation. However, there is a dissident group. Once a planet is consumed, the psychic energy that the people of the worlds is released, it creates a telepath. And the cyborg captain has been trying to eliminate the telepaths because they could potentially be a threat, because they also have telekinetic abilities. In fact, one family is still sore about the fact that the patriarch of the group, of their family, was killed because he was turning into a telepath. And ultimately his son gets changed as well. Luckily, the Doctor and Romana accidentally save him. And it's weird around there because they can't seem to get a pinpoint on the next shard of the key. It looks like it's everywhere. Eventually they find the control room of the pirate planet and discover an elderly woman kept in stasis. Turns out she's an evil queen who used to rule the people of that world with an iron fist, but was overthrown by the cyborg captain before he became cyborg. But he ended up losing a lot of his body in the battle because his ship crashed. Also, he likes to execute people on a whim with his robot bird companion. Ultimately, the Doctor and Romana figure out that one of the cyborg's underlings is actually his controller. He's basically been lobotomized into a decoy. And the evil queen's been using the energy of the planets that they've been consuming to regenerate herself using a hologram. Eventually, she'll take full form and start the tyranny all over again. And when the cyborg manages to break some of his programming, she takes him out like that. And what remains of the various planets that have been consumed are compressed and kept in storage. So she's even going to have her own little trophy room. Luckily, with the help of the telepaths, the Doctor and Romana managed to take out the Queen once and for all. And before she can teleport the planet around Earth and use it up. The Doctor manages to park the pirate planet in a good part of space and decompress the various compressed planets inside the pirate planet so it won't be hollow anymore. And as it turns out, one of the compressed planets is actually a shard of the key to time. So the Doctor teleports that to another part of his space-time, and he and Romana pick it up later. Next, they head back to Earth and discover a mysterious cult of modern-day wannabe druids who have been sacrificing animals in the middle of these standing stones and pouring blood on the stones to make them glow. Curious. They seem to be in the thrall of a Celtic deity whose overall legend includes that of the Morrigan, the crow goddess. And crows and ravens factor into this story quite a bit. They also meet up with a nice archaeologist lady and her assistant, who are fairly helpful. Eventually, the cult is destroyed by these rock monsters that feed on blood. Turns out their homeworld it turns out these rock creatures are aliens, and their homeworld has deposits of material that occurs within blood plasma, which is why the creatures need to feed on blood. And as it turns out, the assistant of the archaeologist lady, she was never human. She was actually this Celtic deity creature, who in turn was also an alien intergalactic criminal who's been using a ship caught in hyperspace above the standing stones as her base of operations. Why she's still on Earth, I have no idea. Maybe it's because the ship is stuck, but eventually the Doctor, Romana, and the archaeologist lady pool their resources, and the Doctor and Romana get aboard the spaceship and release these clusters of sparkles, which turn out to be biomechanical robotic judges. Because as it turns out, it was a prison ship. And the Doctor almost gets executed for letting the sparklies out. Luckily, he's able to filibuster long enough for him to convince the sparklies that the alien criminal is just that, an alien and a criminal, who gets turned into another one of the standing stones in the circle. And eventually, the Doctor finds the key shard, which turns out to be this stone that the alien criminal stole from another world. And once they're finished on Earth, they go to the planet of Tara, which looks medieval, but they have electrified their swords and crossbows to make them more effective, and they have androids. And the Doctor and Romana get caught up in a plot to usurp a good prince and his future wife, the princess, by this evil count who's named Grendel. Yeah, just like the Norse guy. And it involves a lot of androids and back and forth. Romana gets captured a lot this season. But she finds the piece of the key like that. Turns out it was part of a statue that stood outside Mr. Grundle's estate. Let's see, what else? Oh, the princess? Turns out she's the spitting image of Romana. How's that for a coincidence? Weird. Eventually, the evil Mr. Grundle gets defeated, but he manages to make it to safety. Luckily, he's not a threat anymore, and the good people of that world win, leaving the Doctor and Romana free to leave. And they'll end up on a moon surrounding an alien world where humans have set up a colony. Unfortunately, they've displaced the locals, green humanoids they call swampies. They put them on the moon as a reservation, but as it turns out, there are valuable methane resources on that world, so once again, humans are at odds with someone else, and it's the same problem that humans have dealt with since the beginning. Nobody gets along, everybody thinks they're right, and it would all be much easier if humans would stop being so smug and so genocidal. Unfortunately, the green guys are not in a mood to cooperate with anyone, much less the Doctor and Romana, who get on their bad side and get sacrificed, quote unquote, to this mutated giant squid they call Crawl, whom they think is their protector, but really it's just a mutated animal. Considerably larger than a normal squid creature from their world, which was transported along with them to keep the locals happy. Meanwhile, the head of the methane collection facility, who's played by the same guy who got all his evil removed in Might of Evil, same actor, he's basically doubling down on the evil persona, because he's facilitated this whole thing, invading the moon, ousting the swampies, paying off Gunrunner to give them faulty weapons, so he'll have legitimate reasons to take them out completely. Basically, he's like a Dalek. He thinks he's so superior, and the swampies need to be exterminated. Worst human qualities there is in one guy. But they didn't factor in Crawl, who, like a graboid, hunts by sound. Formerly vegetarian, now he's switched to a more protein-rich diet. And Crawl manages to nearly wipe out the facility and the inhabitants of the planet. I'm just going to call it a planet. Luckily, the Doctor and Romana are there because, as it turns out, Crawl swallowed a piece of the key to time, which is what made him grow so big. And at great risk to himself, the Doctor manages to pull the key shard out of Crawl, turning him back into a normal squid, and leaving the last surviving factory worker there to try to make peace with the locals. And finally, we come to the last piece of the key to time, and the last adventure of this season. The Doctor and Romana end up on one of two worlds that are at war with each other. Planet A and Planet Z, because their names are kind of hard to remember. It's escalated to the nuclear level, and Planet A is not doing too well. It's almost a repeat of Skaro. One wonders if they have a specialized scientist working on anything in particular. But no, the only megalomaniac there is the Marshal, the leader of the Planet A military, who doesn't simply want peace, he wants victory. He wants to wipe out the Planet X people, and he's been taking orders from this strange communication device that looks like a skull from behind a two-way mirror. So that should have been his first clue. Meanwhile, the opposition on Planet A consists of a surgeon who's fed up with all the dead bodies and half-dead bodies he's got to deal with, and his girlfriend, the princess, who is played by Lila Ward. She'll probably only be in this one episode, or one cluster of episodes. While the Doctor and Romana are looking for the key shard, they get press-ganged into trying to help Planet A defeat Planet Z. And while the Doctor tries to filibuster, it's revealed eventually that Planet A is being defeated by a computer. Yep, Planet Z is basically using battle droids. There have been no casualties on the Planet Z side. Too bad Planet A didn't think of that. But it's mainly because the computer, which was installed by another Time Lord, who refers to the Doctor as Theet. That's weird. I wonder if that's part of his real name. Anyway, that Time Lord was duped, basically. He failed his exams, so he became a mechanic. And he basically got commissioned to build the computer by a servant of the White Guardian's counterpart, the Black Guardian. And the Black Guardian has employed another being called the Shadow, who looks really ugly. He's like a Skeletor wannabe. And the Shadow has traced the final shard of the key to Planet A, and he's finally implementing his plan. In comes the Doctor and Romana, who figure out that there is a space station between the two planets. But that information falls on deaf ears because the Marshal has the bloodlust and nearly nukes Planet Z for no reason. Turns out Planet Z is kind of clueless. I don't think we even see a single resident of Planet Z. After a bit of runaround, where the Doctor and the other Time Lord end up shrinking for a while, it's revealed that the princess is the vinyl shard. Somehow, the final shard at some point turned into a humanoid, and passed the information in the genes down through the generations. So now the princess is the sixth child of the sixth generation of the sixth dynasty of Planet A. I know what you're thinking, 666, that's gotta be bad, but turns out it's not a bad thing here. And eventually, the shadow forces Romana, who sort of acts on instinct at this point, to become the final shard. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Romana have rigged up a false shard to temporarily get the cube going in order to keep the Marshal trapped in a time loop so he doesn't nuke the planet for no reason. But eventually the false shard deteriorates. Luckily, the Doctor foresaw this, and when the missiles fly, the Doctor has them redirected to destroy the space station, thus destroying the shadow and freeing both Planet A and Planet Z. And with the Marshal out of a job now that the war is over, the other Time Lord, the mechanic, he decides to hire the guy as his apprentice to help rebuild the infrastructures of both worlds. But at this point, Romana is kind of fed up. She was brought in under false pretenses. She thought the president of Gallifrey was the one who commissioned her, and she's never even seen the White Guardian. And she's upset that a humanoid life had to be sacrificed in order to assemble the cube. So when the Guardian contacts the Doctor, he doesn't give him the key, because it turns out the Doctor could recognize a White Guardian from a Black Guardian. And as a final middle finger to the villain of this overarching storyline, he pulls out the stabilizer rod and breaks it, which causes the key to revert to its original pieces. And as a sort of a thank you to the surgeon who went through a serious ordeal helping the Doctor and Romana, the sixth shard becomes once again the princess, and they're reunited to hopefully govern the planet with peace and understanding. Of course, now they're on the Black Guardian's radar, and apparently he's powerful, because at the beginning of the story, the Doctor asked what would happen if he refused to go after this key, and the Guardian said nothing, forever, implying that the Doctor would be trapped for all eternity. So obviously this Black Guardian guy is powerful. But the Doctor foresaw this as well, and installed a randomizer in the TARDIS control. So now, it's back to the good old days, like it was with Ian, Barbara, and Susan. No way of knowing where they're going, and no way of the Guardian knowing where they are either. Next season is going to be very interesting and very random. When next we meet, the return of some old friends, or enemies, depending on your point of view, a big change, and the reconstruction of yet another lost serial, but not in the way it's normally lost. Until then, this is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, never trust someone who says they're the good guy just because they're white. And also, no matter what the time period, humans can still potentially be awful. But we have the potential to rise above it.